Yeah. So what I was gonna say, right, is that I heard this thing about D&D when I started playing it. It was quite some time ago, and my friend said, "Okay, either the people who play a bard, either they play their bard as a rogue or they play their bard as a cleric, and nothing in between." And I
Mm.
I so fucking agree with that statement. Like, cause when I first started playing, I did not know how to play a bard. But then my friend, like the dungeon master, introduced his own bard, sort of for another quest, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you play a bard.
Yeah, I mean, the bard is essentially like the jack of all trades of the game, right? Because he can use most
Mm.
weapons, he can uh, do most spells that other classes can, but he usually is not as specialized as them, so he isn't as good at them as they are. Uh, so he's very versatile, but not very uh, min-maxy about what he can do. Like, if he's doing a spell, then a wizard is probably gonna do that spell better than him. Uh, but he will be able to fucking use a sword, which the wizard will not, for example. So
No, I agree, but they have one thing starting out, and that is Tasha's hideous laughter.
yes.
And that I got like this fire demon like level 20. Well, this was like a big boss battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the first time I played D&D. I got that. I used that. I actually rolled like a really good number on Tasha's hideous laughter on that fucking demon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always so great when you have these horrible monsters that you just put a joke. I just love that so much.
Yes. I mean,
And
that's
then,
why bars are
yeah.
so loved. When I used to watch Critical Role, the bard was one of the highlights of the session usually because that was basically his job, right? He's just making fun of people. So
No, because I remember me and my friend, we had started off to fight because it was something ridiculous, something stupid. He made a comment that like, yeah, something silly, immature, and we got angry at each other in the game, like in real life. And then he attacked me in the game because my bard, like, they have no strength, right? They're not, they're not built
yes.
like tanks. And his character was a fucking tank. And so I got so that's like, nah, fuck this. Because he probably imagined me that I wouldn't do anything back. That's like, fuck this. And that's I roll precious hideous laughter on him. And I needed like a 20 to do it. And of course I rolled a 20. So we
Nice.
start this we start this fight with these goblins is coming in and then seeing me fucking attacking our tank, our DPS essentially. Yeah,
Oh, so
I
you're
love
doing
D&D.
that
I need to
before
play
a
it.
fucking fight?
What did it say?
You're doing that like you're fighting your friend before you're going to fight some enemies? Like, why are there goblins there now?
No, no. As I said, like it was just before a big fight. I think it
Yeah.
was just like, I think it was just after everyone had rolled initiative, and then that happened. It was super silly. We were really angry at
Oh,
each
that's
other, so
so
that's why I did it.
stupid. Holy shit. You're fucking killing yourselves.
Yeah, and I remember the DM just looked at us like, "Are you fucking retarded?" Like, fuck, we did it that way. And then then the other two friends, my other two friends we played with, they kind of like, oh shit, we had to get involved, and it was like, and that was like awkward because they were like, okay, do we get involved as our characters or do we get involved as like their friends? Like, what do we do? Like, and it was like, so we had to like, they had to resort that fight in game before we resorted like it started attacking the other player or the enemies.
I see. That's very kind of your DM to not let you to die from being stupid, I guess.
Man, I remember like the first time we played it, it was so great. Like because he just essentially just gave us the tour because this was the first time any of us, except one guy, had played D&D seriously.
Mhm.
So he kind of gave us some, some low level. I think you know them. They're like these kind of they're a mix between essentially a mosquito and a bat. So they kind of look kind of, a little like an eldritch bat sort of, like very low level creatures. They're like 6 or 7 had hit points each, you know?
I
So,
don't think I know those, but go ahead.
yeah, and so he just had these things attack us, sort of, you know, just tutorial essentially, because we never played a game, right? And we failed so badly, like we lost, we almost died at that fight because none of us knew how to play D&D. And because and then like I think like one like the guy I told you about, the tank guy, he had to do death saving throws, you know, because he was almost dying. And then like the DM just sort of, you know, he does a death saving throw and it's like super low. It's like 5 or 6, something like this. And he looks up at the DM, and the DM is like, he rolls once, kind of goes silent, rolls another one, and like, yeah, you cleared it. He didn't kill you. We all know he fucking rolled a high number. And then, like, my friend, like, who wasn't in the game at that point, he joined us after, but he wasn't in the game. He's just laughing his ass off and like, dude, you're not even in the fucking first town yet. You're not even in the first town. And you're fucking dying already. Like, what the fuck?
It, yeah, that's the kind of stuff that makes D&D so fun.
Yeah, I mean, some of the and oh my god, I remember another time. Like, I don't regret talking about. Like, this story is the one of the best stories because we were gonna go into the goblin camp, and then one of my friends was a rogue, a halfling rogue. So he actually picked a good character, you know, because I picked a wood elf bard, which I'm playing now in Baldur's Gate 3, but a wood elf bard in D&D you shouldn't play that because they don't match the class and the race, though they do not match at all.
Yeah, I think
Unless you really
with
want to.
Wood Elf, I think they gain wisdom, right? Or something like that. So it doesn't do anything for your charisma as a bard.
Yeah, it's something like this. But anyway, and the point was that we came up with this plan that the rogue was gonna sneak in from another area, I think, and I was gonna sneak in because I had a ring or something that made me go invisible. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna steal the ogre's pouch. And so I put on
I've
the
read this
ring.
story
And
before.
then, what do you say?
I've read the story before. Like someone is using a
That's the one I
ring
was
which
like,
makes them invisible to steal a pouch from an ogre. I think I've read this before.
yeah, it's Bilbo.
Yes.
But so we go with kind of the same thing, but I don't remember if it was a ring or it was a cantrip or a spell I had. But anyway, I go invisible. I go in to this ogre camp, right? And then I'm at the thing, and then we were like, okay, so someone's gonna throw a teleportation spell on Gagger to bring him out. And I think it was the rogue who was gonna do. Again, we had this elaborate fucking plan. And then no, I remember now. The rogue wasn't invisible. He was doing the lockpick on the gate, and I jumped over the gate. I think that's what happened. Yes. So he's at the goblin gate, you know, doing the lockpick, you know. So I'm at the ogre. I don't, and I'm about to pickpocket him, and then it's their turn. So the tank guy, he he rolls the critical one. And I remember like everyone around the table just going complete silent. And like we look at the DM with almost like mercy in our eyes, like please show us mercy, please. Because this is like it's filled with goblins, this camp. So the DM obviously thought we were gonna do something else. And he kind of sort of looks at us and then just like shakes his head and then says, you and then what happens is that the tank guy slips and every one of them just go crashing right in through the gate. So these goblins are just there having dinner or something, and then you have these three guys just crashing through the gate. And at the same time, and then he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, Gagger, your invisibility spell it stopped working." Because one guy rolled a critical water, so I was like, oh no. And then but here's the thing, he said, the goblins don't care about you. They just look at your Three Stooges routine and think you're cringe, and they don't do anything.
Wait, what? So somehow you're invading their camp and they don't care? I feel like
There
your
was
DM is
something like
taking a
this.
little bit too much liberty to narrate the story here.
To be fair, there was some. Yeah, remember now, there was other throws I have forgotten. So it might have been that someone threw a charisma roll, someone did another roll. I just remember those 3 points that the tank guy rolled a critical one or someone else and failed, and he just fell through the gate, and our plan just stopped working, and then the goblins didn't care because they thought we were cringe.
Yeah. I feel like that was the DM basically using the goblins to represent his own feelings about what you guys are doing.
Could be, but I don't think so. He was a really good DM. So I think it
mean,
might have been something.
no, I'm saying that he thought that you guys were cringe.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. I think he did say that because we did do some other cringe things. Like, for example, I can just do the quote. He looks at us and say, "This is." I said, I don't have to say what we did because you're gonna hear what we did." Because he just asks a clarifying question, and the clarifying question is, "You use a firebolt against the fire demon from hell. Have I understood you correctly? What you want to do?" And everyone just yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, because like none of us, because and then he says, "Oh, it does no damage." I'm like, "Why didn't it do any damage?" And it looks like it's a fire demon from hell, and we were like, "Oh, okay." Because he was so good. This DM, he was so good. Like he was he's still, I guess, from my side, still a close friend of mine. But he's so good because like he told the story really well, so you were like really drawn into it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So you forgot about these, like you did all these retarded shit because you like forgot about it, you know.
you're too into the character, I guess. Um, again, we should probably fucking talk about the topic of the day. Otherwise, we're gonna do the thing where I have the image in the stream about one
Yeah.
thing, and then we're talking about something completely unrelated.
Yes, and as usual, I can't stay forever. So
Yeah,
let's. Why don't you introduce what we're going to talk about?
sure. We're gonna talk about near-death experiences, which I guess if I had to define it, something like an experience which occurs during the period of time in which an individual should not have the physical ability to have lucid experiences or register memories of them. So typically, when they're close to death, or in anesthesia, or in a coma, or even clinically dead. So this is a period of time in which someone should not have any fucking experience because their brain has no activity or has little to no activity. And if they did have an experience, they wouldn't be able to remember because the parts of their brain which are associated with memory registration are not active, and so we don't really have an explanation for how these experiences can be possible, especially if we think that our brains are what are responsible for experiences. So they are very fucking numerous, I guess. Like this one site has like 5,000 case reports of people who had near-death experiences, and they are all like, I mean, they're weird for sure, but they're also like very well documented, and they also happen in clinical settings, and you can sort of like trace back to the people who talked about them in regards to how they actually, how do I put it? They actually did go through death experience, right? They were close to death, so it isn't someone making something up. So these people were close to death, and then they somehow all seem to converge about what they say when they were close to death, despite not being in contact with one another. And they seem to be able to do things that would be like we can't explain, essentially, right? So they can, for example, talk about stuff that they've experienced during that time such as, for example, a blind person might be able to see stuff that obviously she can't see if she's blind, but when she's in that experience, she
Mm.
can. And
Okay,
some,
I just need to ask a
yeah,
clarifying question here. So you're saying that there are blind people that have quote unquote died and then recall seeing things when they come back.
yes, I also have a
Okay.
case report of it here, which I'll read
Okay, I
later.
understand. Yes.
But so what I've compiled is basically just what this guy Jeffrey Long, which is a he's an oncologist, but he also likes to research this thing. He's published a paper in 2014, citing 9 lines of evidence in regards to near-death experiences and why they're real, essentially. And
Mm.
and he's the same guy in the article that I sent to you, by the way, same doctor.
Okay, okay,
And
okay.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to ask, like, these clinical things. What I'm getting at here, I guess, is that how did they know that the brains weren't functioning, and then, you know,
It depends on the
that's what I don't understand.
case. Yeah, it depends on the
Okay,
case. So for example, like many of the near-death experiences happen during cardiac arrest, which is the
okay,
time
okay.
of death, or the time of during which the body or the heart is no longer beating. Uh,
Mm.
before it's resuscitated with like CPR or what are those paddles called again? Defibrillators. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes.
So before resuscitation happens, during this period, there's a study showing that there's essentially no measurable brain activity in people who are in this state. But people who are in this state still have near-death experiences. So there's like you can infer that, well, if these experiences occur when there is no brain activity, then experiences do not require brain activity to occur, essentially. So the brain and like consciousness are not necessarily causally related, even if they're correlated somehow. Um,
Okay, so then I need to ask a clarifying question here, just so I understand. How do they know that these experiences happen when that part of the brain is turned off? Just to give you an example, right? For example, let's say this happens like in a car crash or something like this. But I know this isn't, he doesn't do those things, but just to give an example so I understand it. So let's say, like I'm in a car crash, right? I'm in my car, I hit the wall, and then I get resuscitated later by the ambulance, and I'm like, oh my god, I had near-death experience, or like
mhm.
I saw angels or something like this.
Yes.
How would you determine when I had them? Because I could have just had them before I hit the wall, not after.
Yes. So there are a few ways that you can show that there isn't necessarily uh, like this problem, the problem of when it happens. Like you can say, well, it happens before, or it happens, just when you wake up, then you would sort of reconstruct the memories.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, you can
yeah.
think of it like that, right? But the problem is a lot of the things which people report during these near-death experiences are things which do occur when the people or the person who is having those experiences, like their body is still dead, essentially. So,
Mm.
for example, they might report. There's this one report. It's actually not something I looked up here. It's something that I've heard before of this woman who she could, when her body was dead, essentially, she could move from her body um, to other rooms in the hospital she was at, and she was able to
Mm.
talk about this red shoe which was in the roof of the hospital, which she saw during her near death experience. And one of the
Mm.
doctors went to the roof and found the red shoe there. So this was something that she could
Mm.
not have possibly known, because obviously that part of the hospital was not accessible to the patients. And
Mm.
since she could know about that, like you can't use an argument such as, well, she just had a vivid uh, reconstruction of what could have happened when she was dead, and then pretended that that reconstruction was a memory rather than just something she made up, when that quote unquote reconstruction actually coincides with reality, right? It's not something you
Okay,
make up.
she could
If
not know.
Yes, and there are many
She
examples of
could
things like
not
this,
know.
right? Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and
Mm.
and so
So yeah,
it's really
yes.
difficult to reduce it to something that is not quote unquote supernatural. It's not really like there isn't a
Mm.
good explanation for what is happening here that doesn't involve like breaking away from most of our like scientific notions of consciousness.
No, no, it's just on a like it's not a big tangent, but just a little tidbit is that these stories like these is why even if I wasn't, let's say I wasn't a Christian, I would still be an agnostic because I would not be able to argue around these things, like stories like this. I would not be able to argue against them unless I call the person telling them a liar.
Yes, and you'd have to call
But I
so
mean, in
many
some
people
stories,
liars, but that actually doesn't explain it. Like how the fuck are these
no, no, I agree,
people?
I agree, I agree.
I mean, I'm not saying that you disagree. I'm just like, I guess
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
hot wood into the fire, I suppose. Um, how are all these people coming up with like essentially the same story, and they're not exactly the same people? Like, one of the lines
Mm,
of evidence here is about how, like, these near-death experiences, which are talked about in the West here,
mm,
especially like in Christian and Judaism influenced countries. Um, they're still the same as people talk in Asia or in Muslim countries like Iran. Like people over there are also having the same experience essentially, and so it isn't like a cultural thing. Like there is something happening that is independent of culture here, and so if it's independent of culture, it's not made up. That's how it is. Because are you
mm.
gonna say that everyone is making things up coincidentally at the same time, but without communicating with each other? It's like how do
No,
you get
it's
that? So I'm not saying
no, no,
about you
I
specifically,
agree.
by the way.
No, 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 I understood that part. It kind of reminds me of this story, like actually this talk I had with ChatGPT, like, so take it with a grain of salt, right? Because that thing does get things wrong. But I was talking about it about African deities, what deities exist in Africa and stuff like that. And to cut things short,
What's a
it started
deity?
telling me
Sorry, what's a
a
deity?
deity,
Oh, a deity,
deity,
like a
like
god.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was talking to ChatGPT about this, and then it started telling me a story about this sky being made of light that looked like was the most beautiful sky being that ever existed that got thrown out of the heavenly realm due to pride. And I was like, that sounds that's and he asked that's like that's like the western shores of Africa that's from. Not so it's like far fucking away from Israel, right? And
Okay,
I'm like,
you can't
hey,
use
why
ChatGPT as a source though, dude. Like that thing
yeah,
actually
I know, I know,
fucking
I know, I know.
lies all
But
the time.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, but I asked it, and then like it was interesting just talking to it about it. But there's this other story that is more verifiable because the guy who put it out is I mean, as far as I see, he's very trustworthy. His name is Vendigoon, and I talked about him before. And he
Hmm.
talked about a different story about this kind of how do I explain it? This isolated tribe in the southern part of Africa, or anyway, a very remote part of Africa, who knew about Jesus,
Yes.
and all his miracles and everything. But they had never met another white man, or sorry, that would be a Middle Eastern man, or you know what I mean, like a Mediterranean, like whoever lived in Judea would have spread the word of Christ, so to
A
say.
non-black
They had
man.
never met someone. Exactly, yeah. So, and they had never met one, so it was impossible for them to know about this, but they
Yes.
still knew the story about Jesus Christ. They might have called him something else, though, so, but it
I
was like
mean,
literally the same story.
to be
And that was
honest, like
crazy. That was just crazy.
I mean, there have been incursions of Christianity in Africa for a long time, and I'm not saying about the Portuguese and the Spanish, which went there and took a bunch of land and then talk about Jesus. Talking about like, I'm pretty sure like Ethiopia knew about the Jews because they fucking stole their fucking Ark of the Covenant or something, like way back when.
Damn. Okay.
Yes,
Shit. Okay.
and that there is still like a very big presence of Christianity in Ethiopia, and
Hmm.
so I don't know where in Africa you're talking about, but like
I can
Christianity,
double check it. Yeah.
yeah, Christianity is not necessarily like a Western religion completely. Like there are, I mean, this
No.
is
No.
how do I put it? It's a fucking conspiracy, I guess, but it's pretty close to the truth. Some of the religions in India, like I think it's Krishna, is exceedingly similar to the story of Christ. So there is a possibility that it was derived from it. And
Hmm.
there's also, I mean, I don't remember where in the Bible exactly it is. I think it's one of the letters from Paul where it talks about one of the disciples of Christ going to the east to spread the word. And
Hmm.
uh, I don't remember like what resulted from that, but I feel like there are still like in China, I think there are still like references to him in history. Although obviously
Okay.
China is not like Christianity has not taken root in China unless you
Not the
start
boost. Yeah.
counting recently, in which apparently Christianity has been growing there. But it's
Yeah.
obviously not a
No.
Christian country.
It's. No, I did read there was this conspiracy, like as you said, the conspiracy. Like it's like I guess it's an extension of that, but one of them is that Jesus was taught by Hindus or something far back how to spread like his message via non-violent means. However, I haven't looked into it that much or looked into the studies that much, so I don't know what historical it has. And also
I
let's remind ourselves that going from
it's false.
give us a second. Yeah, going from Judea, where he's from, to fucking India, that's a long trip, back then. That would have taken a long fucking time for him to
How
make that
about
trip. So
the
that's
fact
why I'm
that
like, maybe not
you
true.
know
Maybe not true.
when Jesus was a kid, he was actually teaching the rabbi at the local temple.
Mm.
So why would he go somewhere to learn from them when he was the teacher to begin with? It's like,
He wanted to show them that Christianity was better than Hinduism. That's
yes,
that's the only reason. Scoreboard. He
he,
just wanted to go there. Scoreboard.
he also
That's
called
what
it
he wanted to do.
Christianity, even though he was the Christ and the first, and there was no Christianity.
That's why he ran. That's why he ran away from India in tears, because he's like, hang on, Christianity doesn't that mean you die at the end? And Jesus just go no, and then runs away back home.
Yes, that does sound exactly like Christ, I have to say.
Jesus Christ, I'm right. Anyway, to go back to the near-death experiences.
Yes.
Um,
I should probably
so,
go over them, like the 9 lines of evidence, real quick, just so you can sort of
mm,
um, situate yourself in the what the evidence suggests, I guess.
mm,
I'll go over it very quickly here. So the first line of evidence is about how people in these experiences don't report having less consciousness or alertness than normal. In fact, more people report having higher consciousness than lower. So the numbers are around 75% say they have more consciousness and alertness. Around 20% say they have normal consciousness and alertness, and only 5% say they have less consciousness and alertness. This is the first line of evidence, which is, well, if we have if we assume that consciousness and brain activity are similar, if not the same phenomena observed through different lenses, then why is it that when there is no brain activity, there is more consciousness rather than less, right? You would expect the opposite, but that's not what happens. So this is the first line of evidence. The
mm-hmm.
second line
Okay.
is,
I
yeah,
see it. Yeah.
um, Sabon found that the group of near-death experienced patients were much more accurate than the control group in describing their own resuscitations. So they had a group of people which were asked to describe their resuscitation, and some of them had had near-death experiences, some had not. And the group which had been or had reported a near-death experience was far more accurate than the group which did not have a near-death experience in describing their own resuscitation. So you could see that this is not people making shit up, essentially. They are able to somehow understand what's happening to their body when they are supposed to be unconscious. And not just their body, right? The surroundings of their body, the people around them. And 92% of reports were considered to be completely accurate with no inaccuracy whatsoever when the out-of-body experience observation was later investigated. And the high percentage of accurate out-of-body observation during near-death experiences does not seem explainable by any possible physical brain function as it is currently known. This is corroborated by OBEs during NDEs that described accurate observations while they were verifiably clinically comatose. So basically, they don't have an explanation for how this is possible again, given this theory that the brain is responsible for consciousness.
Okay, so
Blind
what are they
vision.
report? This is what I don't understand. Like
Yes.
the thing they bring back. What are they reporting on? Are they reporting on like things in the hospital that they shouldn't be seeing,
In
and that are
this,
verifiable to be true, or is it more like the same kind of story with the bright lights at the end of the tunnel?
so in this study, the
Hmm?
part which is they're talking about the accuracy is regarding what happens to their body while they are unconscious, essentially. So which
Okay.
doctor did what nurse said what, etc. Right? This is what they're reporting.
Mm.
But yes, you're right. Most near-death experiences, as a pattern, talk about a tunnel, a white light, and meeting dead people as well. But we'll talk
Mm.
about it in a second. Uh, this is the report that I talked about of the blind girl. So I slowly breathed in the water and became unconscious. A beautiful lady dressed in bright white light pulled me out. The lady looked into my eyes and asked me what I wanted. I was unable to think of anything until it occurred to me that to travel around the lake. As I did so, I saw detail that I would not have seen in real life. I could go anywhere, even to the tops of trees, simply by my intending to go there. I was legally
Mm.
blind. For the first time, I was able to see leaves on trees, birds' feathers, birds' eyes, details on telephone poles, and what was in people's backyards. I was seeing far better than 2020 vision, which is this is a blind girl, by the way, and she's reporting what happened when she was unconscious from drowning. Uh, then,
Damn,
the,
this is some emotional shit, man.
yes,
It's actually really beautiful written. Like I could see the birds, and I was like, damn, shit.
yes,
Anyway,
yes.
continue.
So this is a question they asked. Did your vision differ in any way from your normal everyday vision? In any aspect, such as clarity, field of vision, colors, brightness, depth perception, degree of solidness, transparency or of objects, etc. In response, 722 answered yes, and 65% answered yes, 16% said uncertain, and 20% responded no. So there's a majority of people, like over half of them, saying that they had a difference, like a heightened sense of vision during the experience, which is interesting. Because you'd expect that, like when you're dreaming, you're not seeing things better than when you're awake. Not at all. You might see things differently. You might see things, brighter, but you're not seeing them with more clarity or more detail, which is what they're reporting during these experiences. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so this is a report from anesthesia. During my surgery, I felt myself lift from my body and go above the operating table. The doctor told me later that they had kept my heart open and stopped for a long time, and they had a great amount of difficulty getting my heart started again. That must have been when I left my body, because I could see the doctors nervously trying to get my heart going. It was strange to be so detached from my physical body. I was curious about what they were doing, but not concerned. Then, as I drifted farther away, I saw my father at the head of the table. He looked up at me, which did give me a surprise because he had been dead now for almost a year. Um, So this is a report of someone who had been in anesthesia because he was undergoing a heart transplant, I think. Uh, his heart was
Mm.
outside his body, so I have to think it's a transplant. And
Mm.
this is something which is interesting because a lot of like near-death experiences happen during anesthesia, but this is one which happened during anesthesia and he was essentially clinically dead because he had
Mm.
no heart for a
Because his
second, right?
heart was okay. His
Yes,
heart was not there. Okay.
yes. So
Yeah.
like this is two layers of unconsciousness essentially. So why the fuck is he having an experience there? And
Mm.
this is a quote from the study. The only statistically significant difference between the two groups, near death and anesthesia, was that the anesthesia near death experiences were more likely to describe tunnels in their experiences. So, and the difference was very small. So, whatever is happening with anesthesia, coma, and near death, it's the same phenomena. It's not something different, which is also very interesting, I think. Um, Another part
Yeah.
of
So
what?
yeah. So just to because this is what just so I can sort of see where I'm coming from in this, because it's interesting what you said about the heart thing, because I have a close family friend who had to do the heart surgery like that, so they
Mhm.
had to like cut off everything and then sort of do the what I mean, like, so I do know about that process and stuff, but what's also interesting is that this family friend did have a near death experience where they
Hmm.
were really, really out, and they said that when they were out, they didn't see the bright white lights, but they remember having this so vivid experience of waking up in a green room where everything was green.
Hmm.
And there was these two nurses that came in and said, "Hey, what do you want for breakfast?" And my family friend says, "Oh, I would like some toast and tea." And they give him some toast and tea, and he remembers the thing he remembers so vividly was how good it tasted. And so, I mean, so I just wanted to say that's the only time I've heard of someone having a near death experiences, and they were almost gone. Like they weren't like as gone as, for example, the blind girl you just told me about, but they
Yes.
were getting there, so to say. What I wanted to say too,
Go ahead.
yeah, so because this is sort of important where I'm coming from, is that I think it's very important to remember that I'm not saying that you are like hardcore ride and die and yet you believe all of these things. I'm not saying that you are doing that. But what I am saying though is that the brain is a tricky thing that can show you things that are weird. That's why the only time I would believe in a near death experience or sorry, a death, that they saw something or something like
Mm.
this is if their brain was actually dead and then it turned on again. Then I would believe them. Because I mean, I know people have schizophrenia, right, with voices in their head and stuff. So I know that. That's why I'm always very skeptical to near-death experiences.
Yes.
But I just wanted to get that in there because yeah, I think it's important so people know where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Anyway, go
So
on. Yeah,
there's
let's
at
go to this
least
responsibility.
two things that I need to say in regards to this. So the first is
Yes.
uh regarding the experience of your friend/family. It's
Mm.
not that uncommon, I guess. Like in comparison to other, like I won't say I've read one that was like that, but I've seen a few that were very crazy, and so your friends was actually comparatively normal, I guess, even though it didn't fit the pattern exactly. And
Yeah.
so when it comes to the brain making things up, this is a certain there's a certain difficulty to talking about this, I guess. But the way I would put it is, well, I'm not saying that the brain, quote unquote, is not causing everything, right?
Mm.
Necessarily. What I'm saying is the brain, as we understand it right now, is definitely not causing it. because our understanding of the brain does not account for these facts. It does not. It does not.
Hmm.
It simply does not. So, and so in regards to your comment about, for example, schizophrenia, you say, well, the brain is making people hear voices. Well,
Or see things.
are we able to actually cure schizophrenia yet? The answer is no.
I mean, in
We are
some
not.
cases we have a medication, but like
We
cure
no.
it. I mean,
We
that
can only
depends on what you
control
mean with
it.
cured.
We can only control it, and all we do
I'm
is
just talking about
essentially,
controlling it.
yes, I'm
So
saying
for
curing
you,
it.
like,
I'm saying that we do not have an explanation for schizophrenia. We do not know why it happens, how it happens, why it occurs, and how to fix it. So our theory that the brain is causing it is as good as any because we actually don't really know. And
yes, the chemical imbalance in the brain. Yes,
yes,
that's what
yes,
that's the last thing I've heard about.
just drink a lot of acid and maybe it's gonna fix it, right? Um, so we
Ironically, you might be onto something. Anyway, go on.
I know uh, this thing about like because we don't understand how it happens, we use the
Mm.
shorthands and they say, well, I'm not like I understand why you brought it up because I've actually thought about it myself, and I do like I think like craziness. It's like how they put it. Being crazy is a phenomenon which occurs, right? It happens, and there
Mm.
is a difference between being spiritually connected to something and seeing things which aren't there. Like it's not the same thing
Mm.
exactly. But we also don't know what it is, like what schizophrenia is. We don't know uh, what it is that, for example, is tormenting a person into madness and making them hear stuff that maybe makes them, kill their fucking child or something, which is something that these people
Mm.
do. So because we don't have an explanation, we shouldn't just assume, well, it's the brain, and as long as it's the brain, then we can say that we understand it because we have narrowed down the phenomena to a single object. Except we don't know what the object is. Like we don't know how to fucking make a brain. We don't know how to fix a brain. We don't know what in the brain is doing what exactly, and we don't know how these experiences, which our studies show should be impossible, keep happening. So this is how I would answer the problem of, well, the brain is tricky. It's like, yeah, it's tricky. So let's not say that we understand it yet. Let's keep an open mind to what's happening instead of assuming that we know everything that we need to know.
No, I agree. Like, don't get me wrong. That I mean, we just know some things. We can guess like, oh, okay, this is why it is. And
Yes.
then biologists and whoever is the correct label, whoever is the one who is doing the research on schizophrenia, right? But I mean, we
Yes.
do know some things, right? I mean, we can, if I'm not mistaken, you can tell certain things like what areas of each brain lights up
Yeah.
and so on. But then you also have to but then you also have to take into account that people with some brain damage, for example, people who shift their Rehiso in Attack on Titan, that when their brain stops working, sometimes like there are other areas in the brain that lights up, right?
Yes.
And as a response, and heal it. So, and
Here's
then,
another interesting fact in regards to that. So you're right. You can map brain areas, and they
mm,
are they're not perfect. They're not like the models we have of brain areas are very biased essentially in the sense that they're predicting essentially right-handed males because if a person is left-handed their brain areas are different and if they're female they're very different from a male because a male's brain is more specialized whilst the female brain is more diffuse in how the areas are constituted in the brain. So
mm,
what happens is uh, there is a very big variation between people in what parts of the brain do what. But there are obviously consistencies and continuities. And but here's the thing. One thing that happens, for example, is a person suffers like a car accident, a concussion.
mm,
And you'd think, well, this person is receiving brain damage, right? So the brain is responsible for their intelligence, of course. So now that they receive brain damage, they're gonna be dumber. And of course, sometimes that happens, and sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes a person receives brain damage and now they're a fucking mathematical genius. And exactly what is the anatomical, physiological explanation for damage creating consciousness or intelligence or capacity or ability? Like, what's happening that's making someone smarter by damaging their brain? Precisely. Because that's precisely the opposite of what you would think would happen if the brain was responsible for intelligence, right? Um, so that's one more, you know, fact to the pile of stuff that you don't understand about the brain, because there's a lot of it. It's not a very, how do I put it? We don't have it solved yet. Let's put it that way.
Not sure. And because I remember, the thing is that, I mean, both, because I remember there was this other, not the same family friend, but another family friend who, because the reason why I want to, I guess, is that, how do I explain this? Why I'm all, like, because I see your point, though, like with the near death experiences that they have, the evidence that they should know about these things and they know about these things and that they have mapped out certain things that, okay, this area of the brain shouldn't be on. Why are they recording this? I see the point, but the reason why I've always been hesitant is because I know people like, again, so this other female friend, female family friend that, not the same one with the green room. She said that she had seen a headless woman in her room talking to her. And it's like, okay, what causes someone to see that?
Before
Because
I
I mean, at that point,
I have to ask:
my
is she
yes,
what is the situation in her body? Like, what is she going through that she's seeing that? Like, is she fucking dead or almost dead? I should say.
no, okay. So my female family friend, she saw a woman without a head speaking to her.
Yes, but I'm asking: was that a near-death experience, or was that a dream, or was that something else?
No, it was like it happened. Like it was like a normal day sort of thing.
Oh,
I
okay.
guess she was like sitting in a room and she saw this thing. And then, the first question is, how can she talk to her if she has no head? That's the first question that pops into your mind, right? Uh,
Is it?
but the thing is, like, what I'm trying to get at here, Matt, is that I'm very cautious approaching these things for that reason. I'm sure you are too, and it is interesting. What I'm getting at though is, because I still don't feel like I have gotten, but I mean, what I'm getting at here is that she saw that, and
Yes.
that's insane. Something in her brain causes her to see that, whether or not you think it's real that a headless chick is in her room, or if she's crazy. Something in her brain is making her see that.
Yes.
So
I mean, I've had
it
many
could be.
quote unquote hallucinations, like when I wake up, for example, and or before I go to sleep, and I see stuff that isn't there. And
Hmm,
it's not like I don't think that it's the same thing as a near death experience. Like, I don't think they're comparable. I know the
that's what I'm getting.
difference.
Cool.
Yes, like I know the difference between a dream and reality, right? And these people who are
Hmm,
talking about their experiences also know the difference. Like, dreams are
hmm,
not, they're not mysterious. It's exactly. People know they've had their dreams and they know what they're like and they can tell the difference between dreams and reality. These people are not saying that those experiences are like dreams. They're saying that they're more real than reality. It's the
hmm,
opposite of what you'd expect if they were just like dreams. And so,
hmm.
when I wake up and I see these fucking sure, what's the fucking name of that? like bald, thin-limbed creature. I don't remember. Whatever. It's like
The what?
the bald, thin-limbed creature. Like it's a humanoid with thin limbs. And
Like Slenderman?
yes, like Slenderman. I've seen Slenderman
Yes.
after waking up. It was in my fucking bed. I screamed a lot. And then I realized it was a fucking hallucination. Because I
Wait, wait,
had just
wait, wait,
woken up.
wait. Oh,
Yeah.
how? What? Okay, if you're comfortable sharing more, like how? So this was just after you woke up. You saw this thing in your bed.
Yes. It isn't like. I mean, I have night terrors sometimes, and part of night
Yeah,
terrors
yeah,
is when you wake up, you still are in the dream essentially. You can see
yeah.
what's real, but you also see what's not real there. And I saw that creature. It had, you know, very creepy mouth, like not teeth, like more like I'm not sure, like a mummy's mouth, I guess. And
Okay.
it didn't really have eyes, I guess. It was hollow, and it was thin, and it was looking at me. And then, I mean, my reaction was not to run; it was just to fucking scream while looking at it.
Yeah, understandable.
And
Understandable.
I screamed really fucking loud. And apparently, I mean, my throat was shot for a long time after that. And
Hmm.
then my family woke up and came to check up on me. And then it was only when they were in the door that I realized it was a fucking dream that I had, or it was a hallucination. And then, I said that was okay, and the thing wasn't there anymore. I realized, and then I went back to sleep. I think I don't remember. I think I might have just stayed awake because I was scared. I don't remember. But yeah, it's like these experiences. Like I know that wasn't real. I can tell the difference,
Hmm.
and the I can assume that other people can as well. And I don't know about your friend, which saw the headless lady, but I assumed that she could also tell that it wasn't real. And it isn't essential. Like I'm not saying because there is a part of the brain, let's say, or consciousness or rationality or whatever, which says, well, this isn't real because it doesn't agree with what I believe, right? Like it's
Hmm.
a denial of an experience based on preconceived notions, such as this isn't possible, so it must not be real. But I'm not talking about this. I'm saying sometimes you can think something is real and then you don't actually have to think through why it isn't. You just realize at some point that it isn't, and it's not about
Hmm.
why. It's not about a rationale that you make up. It's about feeling, like you feel that it's false, and that's the difference. And so I'm pretty sure that you know your friend could also feel that it wasn't real afterwards. Although I can't tell for sure because I haven't heard it from her.
No, here's the thing. She thought it was real. This thing happened. Like she could talk to this entity or creature. But I realized that because now I understand more about the story. I remember I've had not as vivid as you explained it, but I had one of those before. Like this was in Australia, and I was trying to sleep, and I had this. Okay, so again with Kayako, right? Anyone who's watched the movie know that when she walks, it sounds very iconic because she puts her palms on the floor and it sounds like that when she runs fast. And so what I remember was I was in my bed and started drifting off to sleep, and then I hear that sound, and then she's next to me in the bed and starts strangling me. And I try to scream and I can't scream, and and then as I just fight myself awake, I realize that it's my fucking arm that has been put on my mouth and I can't breathe.
Yeah,
So in my sleep, my fucking arm has like slid over my mouth and I can't. Oh my god, I was so embarrassed, and there was no one there to be embarrassed
did
too. You
you
know?
Were you able to move it
I
away,
hated it.
or were you paralyzed?
No, I think it was too heavy because I was really fat back then. So it might have been. So I was too fat, so I had to use my other arm to move it. Right? No, but I think it was weird because it had just sort of gotten stuck,
Hmm.
but I could still breathe through my nose though, so I could get air, but I couldn't get enough air, so to say.
Let's see.
But with the near-death experiences, what the things that creep me out is the stories about the bad place, so to say. Like the people start talking about that as they're dying, they start smelling sulfur and hearing agonizing screams.
I
And
actually haven't
there's,
read any of those here, but huh.
yeah, and then there's one that always freaks the fuck out of me, and it's this guy who said, how does it go? Yes, he was like a bully. Like he had been bullying this girl relentlessly in high school or something like this, or not high school, but the place you go before high school, that area when it's
Middle
really
school?
bad, so to say. Yeah, middle school. Yeah. So he had bullied this girl ruthlessly with a group of friends in middle school, and
Hmm.
then when he was like 20 or something, he was in a car crash or something like that, and was like clinically dead and everything. And when he came back to it, he was telling this story about when he died. He didn't see like a bright light. He saw a train station, like a dimly lit train station. And in this train station, he knew that this girl was there, the girl he had bullied. And she was in the shadows stalking him and coming closer to him, and he couldn't run away from her.
Did
And
she
she was
die,
like gaining on
or was
him.
she alive?
That's the thing, she was alive.
Huh. Yeah, that isn't a near-death experience probably then. For reasons I will talk
That's
about later, but continue, sorry.
yeah, no, that's about it. But it always freaks the fuck out of me for some reason, because it's like so uniquely scary. Like he's in this. Because you can imagine yourself, if you're like if you're the victim of being a bully, then you feel that way. That oh my god, like nowhere is safe. They're gonna find me, and you get this feeling of anxiety in your back, right? And then he was like doomed to that forever if we
Yes.
believe that this was truly hell or something like this. And that's why it's so scary to me, at least when I hear that story.
Okay, so
But yeah,
this is probably
going to rush because we need to wrap up soon. But yeah, because
this is a
yeah, go
good
on with
place
yours.
for me to bring up these two things. So first,
Yes, yes,
I
yes, yes.
mean, this just so I go through it. Um, Line of evidence 5 is just the Dr. Jeffrey Long talking about the pattern in which many people experience their lives happening in a flash, right? They see their life from the
Mm.
beginning to end during their near-death experience. But that's not very important for you. What is important is this line of evidence number 6. So I'm going to read a few things. A study by Dr. Emily Kelly was a comparison of 74 near-death experiences with descriptions of encountering deceased individuals with 200 near-death experiences that did not describe encounters with the deceased. The study found that when near-death experiences encountered beings known to them from their earthly lives in their near-death experiences, only 4% described meeting beings that were alive at the time of their experiences. So this is insane to me. Like this is not something that I would have expected at all. Even if like regardless of if a large or a small fraction of people were liars and were making shit up, which is somewhat to be expected on things like this, right? You'd
Yeah.
expected that even if it's true, it's gonna be a not it's not gonna be everyone that's telling the truth. But somehow 96% of people who said they met someone said they met a person who was dead. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible. Like it's incredible consistency. Like as if people were all in on the joke, let's say. Like they're conspiring to make this happen. Like you'd
Mm.
think that a lot of people would lie about being able to meet people who was alive or who were alive at the time of their experience, right? For example, say I have a scare and I hit my car and then I wake up in the hospital and then I decide, oh, I'm gonna try to make a near death experience report and see if I can get famous with it, right? Something like that. I'm
Mm.
not sure exactly why else you'd lie about it. So what you'd say is something like, well, I met friend X and friend Y because I had an out of body experience and he was at work. So what you'd say is something like, well, I met friend X and friend Y because I had an out of body experience and he was at work or something, right? And then
Mm.
you'd know that he was at work because that was the time that you were near your death, and during that time he would usually be at work. So you'd lie about seeing him so that you give credence to the your ability to have had been out of your body by giving a fact that other people can independently verify. So you say, "Oh, I saw, Jeff. He was at work." And then other people
Mm.
go and call Jeff and say, "Hey, Jeff, at this time, where were you?" And Jeff says, "I was at work." And then they go, "Oh, he got it right." So this is something that you could see as a potential um, lie that people would tell to give credence to their story if they wanted to. And I'd expect that, maybe 20-30% of people would be lying about their near death experience for attention, essentially, fame or whatever. But given that 96% of people only described meeting people who were dead, I, like, this is not like, this tells me that the amount of people who are talking about this who don't believe in their experience or who are making it up and haven't really had an experience, it's devastatingly low. Like, it's negligible, I think. And
Okay, I have a little hard time following. I get most of it, but that's why I said little, right? But
okay.
so 96. So when they did this study, 96 people reported that they saw someone that was already dead.
No. Of the people who reported people are meeting beings, 96% of them only reported meeting beings who were dead. Do you get
Isn't
it?
that what I just said?
No,
I
what you
thought that
said
was
is,
that's what I.
you said 96% of people said they met dead people, but this 96% of people is a separate group. Uh, the pool of people you're talking about is different, I guess.
Okay, that's what you're getting at. Okay. Okay, so I must have missed the first part of the evidence, and and that's like just the kind of outset of the study, so to say. But if I understand correctly now, is that when they had done this experiment or the study,
Yeah.
96 people, 96% of the people reporting seeing people that were already dead. Uh, sorry, I fucked that up completely. What I meant to
Okay,
say
so
was
there,
the
I think I
people.
can probably make it simpler. So there's a group of people which report near-death experiences. Of this group
Yes.
of people, there's a certain number of them who said that they met beings. Okay.
A
Of
thing. Okay, you're saying beings, like things,
Yes.
like I don't know,
No.
ghosts, not
Yes. Yes. Yes.
not
Ghosts.
angels,
It
angels.
it counts as angels, I guess. It counts.
Okay, so
Angels
yes,
counts as
angels. Okay,
beings,
cool.
but not
Yes.
objects. So that's what beings means in here. So these people who said that they
Yeah.
met beings, of these people, 96% said they only met people who were deceased, and 4%
Okay.
said that they met people who were alive.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, I understand now.
Okay. So here's the interesting thing, I
Uh,
guess.
wh- uh,
I mean, here's
hmm.
one interesting thing. There's a case, a person reported a case of seeing a person, and then you'd think, okay, so that's one of the people, one of the 4%, right? The people who said that they met a person and they were alive, and then they later learned that that person had recently died. So
Okay.
that's just,
Shit. Okay.
it's just an interesting thing.
But can you just, just imagine the bad luck that guy who died must have felt? Like, oh, hey man, you're here. What are you here? I'm just doing a study on near-death experiences. What are you doing? Oh, okay. You're like,
You're dead.
oh shit.
Sorry, man.
Dude, that's a fucking Pirates of Caribbean Dead Man Tell. No, 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 wait. At World's End shit. That's what happened in that movie, Pirates of the Caribbean Part 3. Elizabeth Turner sees her dead dad, and she doesn't know he's dead. And then she sort of leaves. That's exactly what happens, man.
And here's another thing that's also weird, I think, because
Mm?
we're, I mean, you are probably still thinking from the perspective of, well, these people are, their brains are making up stuff about their memories, right? Like they have
Mm.
this memory of this deceased person that they really loved and they really miss. And so now that they are near death, they're thinking about them, and so they are making up a memory of them. And you'd expect, if that was the case, that the people that they saw when they were dead were people close to them, right? And, people who they have many memories with. But
Mm.
in 1/3 of the cases, the encounter deceased person had a poor or distant relationship with the non or near death experience person, or was someone that had died before the near death experience even was born. So the people that they are meeting when they are near death are not necessarily people they were close with, although often they are. But 1/3 of the cases they're not. Um, and
Okay.
it's another thing to put in the we don't have an explanation for this jar, because if we understood this, we'd think that being close was necessary because it would be people who were in the memory of the person, right? So
Mm.
maybe, who knows, you have a near death experience and you see your parents there, or someone who was deceased and you were close with. But instead, what people see are often uh, grandpas or grandmas they never saw before, they don't know exist.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this report. I approached the boundary. No explanation was necessary for me to understand. At the age of 10, that once I crossed the boundary I could never come back, period. I was more than thrilled to cross. I intended to cross, but my ancestors over another boundary caught my attention. They were talking in telepathy, which caught my attention. I was born profoundly deaf and had all hearing family members, all of which knew sign language. I could read or communicate with about 20 ancestors of mine and others through telepathic methods. It overwhelmed me. I could not believe how many people I could telepathize with simultaneously. So this guy's deaf. He doesn't know what sound is like because he's deaf since birth,
No.
and he has a near-death experience, and he's able to telepathize with 20 ancestors, and it's not the stuff that someone would say uh, if they wanted to fit in with the other stories, right? But it's also interesting
Mm.
because it isn't exactly different in a certain sense. Like they're meeting that people that they don't necessarily even know, although apparently they have some relationship with them. And because this is the thing, right? They meet people they don't know personally from their earthly lives, let's say, but there are people who are related to them often. So it's like the grandma they never met, or this guy is the ancestors that he's never met before. And
Mm.
again, he's able to do things that he wasn't able to do in life, in this case to essentially listen without being, without having hearing. uh, so I mean, I don't know,
It's
it's a very interesting thing, I think.
I mean, can you imagine like how in like I mean it's again a sad story, but I mean at the same time, can you imagine like the first thing you hear and can remember hearing is an angelic choir? That's really cool. No, I mean, you
Honestly,
said
when
that
he
like
when he said
yeah.
ancestors, I was imagining like these tribal people.
No, no, I said angelic choir.
Yeah, no, I know, but he says
Uh-huh.
ancestors, right? So to me,
Yes.
ancestors is like this tribal thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it would be interesting. Like, I mean, it makes you think, right? If you die, if you actually, dude, I'm gonna see fucking so many gypsies and so many Sami people. It's gonna be great,
What do you think the gypsies are gonna be doing in the afterlife?
dude. They're gonna have found peace. They've stolen everything, but God doesn't care. He can still get it back, so it's fine. They've stolen everything, so it's cool.
God just makes a
But
copy of whatever they stole and give it to the owner again, so they
well,
both
it's not
have it.
again. You know, just let them. Yeah, but yeah, it was interesting to talk about this. We can
I
talk about it more next time if you want.
I just want to go over like very quickly what I missed, because then we don't have to go it over again. It's not a
Does it take
long.
1 minute?
Yes, it's just the titles.
Go.
So uh, the line of evidence 7 was about child experiences, and the conclusion was essentially,
Mm.
well, children are still having the same experience, and they're not like, even at ages in which they wouldn't be able to describe their experience, they're still describing the same things that adults describe. So
Mm.
it's basically another point of evidence of why this is not cultural. And then there's cultural evidence, or line of evidence 8, cultural differences, in which he goes over different regions of the planet which have the same thing, like Muslims and Asians, and they have the same notion of, like, they report the same experience essentially, even though they're not Judeo-Christian. And line of evidence 9 is the people who report that their lives changed after their near-death experience, and more than half of people say they made large changes in life because of their near-death experience. So this goes in line with the notion that they believe that it was real. And there's also, 24% made moderate changes, 10% made slight changes, and only 5% made no changes after their near-death
Okay.
experience. So it
I think the
reminds me
change
of,
after makes sense.
yeah, and it reminds me of psilocybin, you know, which is a similar thing, I
Mm.
think, which is it's like a product which apparently reduces brainwave activity, but gives heightened consciousness and awareness at the same time, which again is something that you wouldn't expect if you thought that brain activity and consciousness were correlated. Apparently, they're inversely correlated. Maybe brains, their function is to keep us asleep rather than keep us awake, let's say. But regardless,
Mm.
these experiences seem to transform the people who have them, because they are not able to uh, make sense of the world, or after they have this experience they realize that their notions of the world could not be right, and so they have to reconstruct their vision of the world to fit them. And so this is what changes their lives, I think.
Um, that does make sense. I've heard about people changing their lives when they get like one of these things, but like near-death experiences. Then I also heard about people like just meeting someone who shows them where does this particular road end. So but that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. But we can continue talking about this next time because you can send me those the notes you had, and I can actually look through them.
Okay. Yeah.
Better because I did. Here's the thing: I did check the article you sent me though. That I did check. I just didn't realize that you had more notes than that. So
I mean, I had to bring up some cases as well, and I
yeah.
wanted to understand a little about, because this is something I haven't told you. So the reason I was interested in this is because I think I've told this to you before, which is that I'm listening to Olavo de Carvalho, which is a philosopher, Brazilian philosopher, and he has like a series of lectures, and I listen to it when I'm, in the gym or stuff, doing stuff. And
Mm.
he also mentioned a lot of these near-death experiences as facts which show that, basically he concludes that afterlife, like there must be an afterlife. There is no explanation to that
Mm-hmm.
can convincingly explain these without making use of an afterlife as an explanation. and
Mm.
and like I didn't exactly believe him, like I didn't agree with the argument fully, because I mean, he has many things that he says that I don't agree with because he's that kind of guy. But when I found the article, I was like, man, like, uh, it's one thing if you hear from one guy, but if you hear from two guys who are completely unrelated, like, and they're not even the same fucking continent, you start paying attention to it, right? Because maybe they know something you don't, and
Mm.
it's like two independent sources of evidence, right? And so after I saw the article, I was like, okay, I guess I have to think through this, so I might as well uh, make it a topic on our conversation.
Yeah, no, I understand. Understand. But yeah, send me those things, and I will talk to you later. Okay?
All right, see you later.
Take care, man.